Brandon, thank you for joining me today. Brandon Medeiros is the co-founder of Alidade Partners. Brandon, where are we recording from today?
Summit, New Jersey, just outside New York City. I am in my basement because my wife is upstairs with my kids. And it's nice and quiet down here.
So, do you work out of a co-working space? Do you have offices? Where's the team?
Our team is very distributed. We've got 3 here in New York, 1 in San Francisco, 1 in Melbourne, Australia, and 1 in Tel Aviv.
Wow. Okay, so as a new, are you the CEO of the company?
I am the CEO of the company. Yeah.
How do you feel about running a distributed team?
For us, it's pretty native. A lot of us are ex-WeWorkers, workers, so we got very used to dealing with jobs and deals all over the planet. And as I'm sure you knew, WeWork was a bit of a madhouse. So we were raised with Slack and email, and I still go back to Mark One phone call from time to time. So for us, it comes pretty easy, and I think it'll be sometime before we're going to need an office, because again, we're not all in the same place. Our next hiring is going to be in Southern California, in the middle of the States.
Yeah, I feel like there might be a new term like native flex. Like there's like digital natives, right? Like I have a 10-year. You have 1 child.
2.
And what are their ages?
5 and 2.
5. And the 5-year-old.
Tycho and Ada.
Okay. And for sure the 5-year-old wants to like swipe everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Like as if everything were built to be swiped because that's how they expect. My daughter's like, how did you do this back in the day? As if I'm like 80 years old.
Yeah. Exactly. To be honest though, like, and I know this is gonna sound boomerish or millennial at this point, I guess, it is amazing to me how good Apple makes its products, right? That a 5-year-old can navigate anything.
Yeah, totally. Oh, my 10-year-old, this will make me, and I'm not a millennial. Yeah, she's way better at all the things. I don't want to be that person, but often I'm like, hey, can you just fix this for me? Or why is my computer doing this?
Yeah,
and I think of myself as being like pretty like tech savvy, but it's just like, yeah, it's so natural to her. We call her Apple support. I mean, not that you need, to your point, like Apple products are so great. I can't wait till they make a car. I will be first in line for the Apple car.
I think it's supposed to have been coming for like 4 or 5 years by now. So we'll see.
I know, totally. Okay, tell me about, how did you get to WeWork? A little bit about your background, which we'll get to where you are today. We're building.
Yeah, sure. So
state of Brandon.
I want the whole story.
I mean, if it's interesting, I'm curious. I'll cut you off if it gets irrelevant.
I'll try my best. And this is I think every pitch that we do, we have to kind of tell the story anyways, right?
Okay.
So I graduated 2008 into the teeth of the recession.
Right?
Yeah, it was hilarious. I was supposed to go get my master's in economics. I graduated with a degree in econometrics and finance. And econometrics is like, it's just statistics, pretty much.
What were you going to do with this degree? Did you know, or like if the job market was hiring?
I wanted to be an economist. I wanted to work for the National Bureau of Economic Research.
Like an intellectual. You're going to be a thinker and a.
Yeah, I wanted to live in an ivory tower and never come down.
Okay, interesting.
In fact, somebody always said, like, I think you'd have more fun standing around a particle accelerator, and I definitely would. Not that that's
nerd. Total nerd.
Yeah, total nerd. You might not know that about me, but total nerd.
Well, I did have on my list to ask you what you're reading right now, because that's one of the things I remember from our time in the airport lounge.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of, say the title for those of you.
Called Hubris, The Tragedy of War in the 20th Century.
Exactly. Who reads that book?
It's really good. It's really good. So I graduated and my parents were like, yeah, you're not getting your master's. Our portfolio is not looking good. Right. So
at least we're not funding your life right now. So exactly.
So I instead found myself working for a commercial real estate company in New York City, company by the name of Time Equities. I worked there for 15 years. And
15 years. So you sort of accidentally went there and then ended up there for a long time. Wait,
exactly.
Were you born and raised in New Jersey? Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised outside Philadelphia, Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Allentown.
Allentown.
Interesting. Okay.
Grandpa was a steel worker.
Wow.
Yeah. Um,
Allentown's going through a little bit of a renaissance right now. Yeah.
it is. It's still a tough town.
Okay. Still tough.
Yeah.
You're doing some,
19,
I'm sure.
1952. It was the city of America. Mack Trucks, Air Products, Bethlehem Steel. It was
Yeah.
everything going for it.
Yeah.
Lehigh Valley Railroad ran right through, and then railroad got shut off. Bethlehem Steel went out in '96. Yep. So yeah, then I found myself in New York City, working as a retail broker. So I went from an aspiring economist to a retail broker in 2008.
Okay.
I was opening doors of
I like the grit. I like the grit that this introduces into.
true grit.
Although Allentown has its own grit, but
Yeah. And I was, you learn some weird lessons while doing retail brokerage. One of them is in the summertime, never open a cooler in a former deli. Never do that.
oh God.
Because it's 104 degrees inside of there, and there's probably something left.
Something.
So lessons that you learn. And I got a great opportunity there. Time Equities was a fantastic company. I went from retail brokerage to commercial office. Eventually, I took over the entire New York City portfolio from a leasing perspective, which is about 2.4 million feet. And then later on, I took over asset management of a large portion of that portfolio. And then 2017, the chairman decided that New York City was not necessarily the right place for parking his dollars anymore. And I got my heart broken on two developments I was working on. We ended up selling both of them. And I kind of looked at myself and said, if I want to stay here, I'll be acquiring industrial sites in the middle of America, going to small town airports. I don't really want to do that necessarily. So a job at WeWork opened up. But I was always fascinated by WeWork, right? We all were. 2014, 15, especially if you're in the industry, commercial real estate industry.
And in Manhattan, they were on your radar screen.
All the time. Like they were doing things that we had never even believed were possible, right? And so I had the opportunity to join, and I had a really interesting title there to start. I was called Enterprise Real Estate. And what that meant was anytime we had a large enterprise need in a market where we weren't in, my job was to go to that market with a tenant in tow and find a building, cut that deal with almost no resources, right? So I had a real fun career doing that. I flew all over the world, traveled to a bunch of different countries, tried to do deals in Portugal and Europe and England and France and South America, Central America. But I found myself in 2018 working on the Starbucks HQ2 expansion from Seattle to Atlanta. And it was there that I was cutting a deal at a building called 725 Ponce. And I found that it was probably the hardest deal I'd ever tried to do in my life, right? Those deals were incredibly hard because what you had on one side is a large occupier who was trying to get the lowest cost humanly possible. On the other side, you have an owner who's trying to get the most rent he can potentially achieve at the lowest cost. And there you are sitting in the middle trying to make a margin.
Yeah.
It's like trying to hold two wild horses away, right? And I remember sitting there for the first time, though. This was super weird. I was building that 735 Ponce, which said, we'll never allow WeWork in the building. We cut the deal with Starbucks, flew to Seattle, worked with them for a while. And I said to the broker for Starbucks, I need you in the room because I'm gonna get a meeting set up with the landlord. And he said, what do you want us to do? And I said, all you need to do is say, you don't get Starbucks without WeWork. That's it. That's all you need to do. So we go to the meeting. I'm in the meeting. Our head of real estate's in the meeting. Our broker's in the meeting. The Starbucks broker's in the meeting. The owner's broker's in the meeting. The owner's in the meeting. And we sit down, and Jim Irwin, really, really great guy, goes, so what are we talking about? And points to the Starbucks broker, and he goes, you don't get Starbucks without WeWork. And it was one of the weirdest moments, I think, in my life to that point, because you just never saw any room that looked possibly like that. You had an operator, their broker, the tenant, his broker. It was the strangest thing, and we ended up walking out of there with a handshake that we're all wanted to do the deal. 6 months goes by. That's how long it took to try to close some of these things. And I had gotten eaten up by both sides through the whole thing. And then I get a call one day from Starbucks, head of real estate. She says, what's his name? Howard Schultz has decided to run for president. He's no longer the CEO. Okay. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
They cleared house of a lot of their executives, and the deal was dead. They were no longer going to Atlanta.
Time kills deals.
Time kills deals. But what I learned,
somebody might decide to run for president.
Time kills deals, and Howard Schultz's aspirations kill deals. So what I learned from that, though, was it wasn't possible. It wasn't possible to scale that type of business. Yeah. Starbucks wanted flexibility.
Right. So the vision was Starbucks wants you to drive their flexibility approach. Like, they're not going to do it themselves. WeWork knows how to do this. Go put us in a building, manage our space. This is the whole, right, like the IBM example. And IBM worked, though.
It worked.
The whole building.
They're really hard, really hard. Because you have, essentially what you have is WeWork, who could do the flex products really well, the owner who could offer conventional really well, and the occupier who wanted the cheapness of a conventional deal and all the flexibility of flex, right? And their use case was so...
Even Starbucks was not like, we just want this and we don't care how much it costs. We gave them, we showed that over the course of 10 years through the transaction that we structured, I think we were going to save, like, I don't know, it's been a long time, but like $8 million, $9 million. Right. Significant. Enough to make the CFO happy.
Yeah, enough to be like, oh, this is, because again, their use case was really interesting. It was like 50 people to start, going to 75, going to 100, going to 250, but potentially up to 500, right?
Yeah.
The perfect use case. So I tell you this to say that after that, I was pretty jaded. I started to recognize that fundamentally the world as I started to see it meant that one operator had to be able to offer all of the products in order to be able to cater effectively to an occupier. It was just too confusing to expect a lot of people to want to go through that brain damage, right? And I got it in my head that at the time, again, 2018, WeWork still on a tear. I got it in my head that I believe that WeWork could be that asset manager, right? And that's what asset management really is. It's running an asset on behalf of an investor in order to accomplish a business plan, right? Yeah. So we took the underwriting from that deal and the underwriting from the new underwriting that we had put together, and we were showing that a flexibly managed building could have a large proportion of conventional under long-term leases and be able to cater to flexibility to its domestic tenants, like the ones inside, while also being able to address the external marketplace, right? When that tenant or those mixture of tenants don't need it, and we could probably run at higher occupancy rates. We could probably deliver lower occupancy costs to our clients, and we could deliver high levered returns, right? So we could deliver more returns even when you take financing into account. We could outcompete. So I set out from there to find markets where WeWork wasn't in, and I could have a little bit of room to play. Bentonville, Arkansas, Omaha, Nebraska, Charleston, South Carolina, a couple of towns in Connecticut. I found partners, found investors, got some buildings out of the ground.
This is outside of Wait, have you left?
This is still WeWork. Still WeWork. Still inside WeWork.
As WeWork. But Brandon, like, I have a new plan. I'm starting.
New plan. New plan based off hard lessons, right? Yeah. So we put those deals together, and they were called full building asset management agreements. They're really like hotel agreements, but we call them asset management agreements. And WeWork was going to be able to deliver its expertise while simultaneously delivering long-term conventional space that could be designed by WeWork as well, because we had the Powered by We program at the time. Mm-hmm.
Wait, how many square feet do you need to be able to do this in a building? How big does the building need to be?
Yeah, ideally for scale, you want to be somewhere around that 250 range. Anything bigger than that, we didn't necessarily have the data or the operational understanding of how we would have done it. So we were really targeting that 2 to 250,000 square footer, right? So like boutique.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That was really fun. That was probably the most fun I ever had for a year and a half. Just having this whole army behind me and going out into the front and seeing what we could do. And then 2019 hit, which was the S1.
I see what's coming.
Yep. And And after the S1, lost a lot of credibility. That was the big part, right? WeWork was sort of in crisis. I think it's gotten significantly better by now. But I just no longer felt confident that we were going to be able to deliver those deals when we had a lot of work to do, right? So I had to unwind all those deals, which was probably the most miserable 3 months of my life.
So were any of those live? Or
They were all of them were, one of them was coming out of the ground, one of them was in design, and two of them were about to get taken over. So yeah, that was tough, but everybody understood, right? In fact, the Bentonville, Arkansas one is out of the ground. You can look at it. It's called the Ledger. Really, really cool building.
Oh, that's why I remember Megan was like, Brandon knows this building. Yeah. Wait, is that the one where you can ride the bike around?
That's the one where you can ride the bike. So Michelle Rokin was the architect, and I got to work with him every day, bringing that building to life. So really cool to be a part of that. But yeah, when it ended, it was hard. I stayed at WeWork for a little while, but I always knew what I wanted to do, right? And so we set out in 2020 to start Alidade. Initially, Alidade was going to be a investment vehicle. We were going to raise money and kind of rinse and repeat. But we started to look to the marketplace, and we recognized that there was a ton of value to be created from the owner community, right? The owners started to see in the 2010s, but really in 2020, the peak of COVID, that if they didn't make changes, things were going to get grim. So I got a call from Lendlease, the Australian developer, and we had the opportunity to work on Milan Innovation District, which is a 3.5 million square foot development. That was really fun, really exciting. We helped them on sort of bringing a flex platform to life, and we kind of looked at it then and said, "Wait, what are we doing right now?" Right? Because we always knew, and we were building for the purpose of this. Is I think where flex comes back in again in a really meaningful way today. We always believe that properly done, flex can be a very, not just an amenity, but a very serious concession and a change in the way that we operate space, right? And it started to become even more telling during COVID when utilization rates started to plummet and work from home started to rise. So we said, okay, this is the type of business that we want to do. And from there on, we've brought on a lot of really cool, large institutional owners. We tend to specialize in that space. By the way, if you have any other questions, stop me, but I'll kind of keep rapping.
Yeah, keep going, then I'll ask some follow-ups.
So what we also started to notice was the tools that we had were insufficient for the job, right? We were still using space planning calculators, right? And for X amount of people, desks, for X amount of desks, conference rooms, but it was irrelevant today,
right?
Because utilization threw everything to the curb. So we started to look for a partner, a technology partner, and we found one. It's a company called SpaceMate. Davide Shaman, the guy in Tel Aviv, is now one of our co-founders. And what Davide taught us was something called agent-based modeling. And agent-based modeling is really interesting. It's been applied to hospitals and large infrastructure for quite some time. And all it basically says is, I can't see what people are doing inside of my space, but I know that there are only a certain amount of things that people can do, right? And so agent-based modeling says, I want to predict what those people do when they're inside of their space. And so we started to really adapt that into our platform, and brought us a very different way to model how buildings were being utilized. And it also brought us a very different way to understand the implications of X amount of days of work from home or X amount of different work styles.
Model occupancy in addition to
models people in space, and then what people do when they're in that space. And kind of like the simplest way to think about it is there's 10 hours in a day.
Yeah.
There's only so many things you can do in 10 hours. I can work by myself and I can work with other people. When I'm by myself, there's only so many activities you can do by yourself. When I'm with other people, there's only so many types of people, number of people, and times in which I do things. Those are all known knowns inside of Office, but no one had ever kind of asked the question, do we need this? Because we never did before. We were occupying space the same way for 50 years, right? So we adapted that in, we merged with the company, SpaceMate became Alidade. And what we really started to look at then was the tools that we built were very powerful, right? They were allowing us to predict what people would do with a ton of different variables, right? If I grow, if I contract, if the amount of people who are remote come back, if there's visitors, what types of spaces will I be using? So from there, we started to go after the occupier market. And we said, hey, I think we have a better system. If you can provide us with the data, we can provide you with what we think is going to happen. And that kind of takes us to where we are today, which is a company that specializes in, we call it demand modeling, right? Tell me what I look like, tell me what my data is taking in, understand that data, and then predict what's going to happen, predict how often we're going to show up, predict when we show up, what we're going to do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a calendar basis. Show us the relationships between two teams, right? And so all of those things have sort of formed together to really create what we call composition today, which is I want to understand with the data that I have, what's going on if I'm an owner in my asset. How can I change the way that I have my asset to maximize value, decrease occupancy costs? If I'm an occupier, how can I change my footprint? How can I adapt some conventional to flex? How do I know when the right amount of those things, when I have the right amount of those things? And so that's where we sit today as a company that sort of sits on both sides. Owner, occupier, really powered by the same architecture, which is people. That's it.
So give me like a case study. If there's an occupier looking at a Heinz building, because I know it's public that you work with Heinz because you put together the panel at the recent conference. Yep. So are you all in the same room? Is this putting everyone on the same side of the table? Like what does the interaction look like in terms of, are you going to the occupier first and modeling demand and then going to the landlord and saying, well, this is what they look like. And this is like,
so what I think most owners like fail to sort of realize is they have an enormous amount of data, but it's very distributed. It's very broken into strange silos, right? They know exactly how much people are paying in rent. They have their floor plans. They know exactly how that space is built because they have them for their construction. They know how many people are coming to the building because most of them have badge swipes.
Yep.
So they know almost as much as the occupier does. And yet nothing gets done with that information. So what we look to do is try to mesh all of those data sources together into a common space, right? And so in that common space, have we taken in all of the things that measure people? Have we taken in all of the things that measure space? Have we taken in all of the things that measure the relationship between people and space? Because it's a weird sort of function of real estate. It's like, you know that you want to measure people, but you can't see them all the time unless you're watching them, and nobody's going to do
unless
it,
you get
right?
the sensors under all the chairs and
exactly. And it's like, it gets very strange and weird.
Yeah.
And so you have to take in all these other things which tell you about people, right? And then from that, you have to analyze. This is where econometrics comes back in. Statistically, how are those people behaving?
Now you're living your best life. You're in real estate, you're looking at stats, you're predicting. Yep.
Yep. And so it says, like, the owner looks at it and says, I want to understand what my occupiers are likely to do before their lease ends. I want to understand what I should be offering
if
them.
They have the same information, right? So if everybody's fully informed, how are they, right? What's happening and what decision are they likely to make?
Yeah, exactly. And so that data for us, and this is what I was joking about on my panel, it's like, does real estate make data decisions? The answer is no. We generally haven't, right? Because we've been analyzing the wrong data. The data is around, like, tell me how many leases got done. Tell me about the rent that we pay. Tell me about TIs. We're not looking at, tell me about humans showing up in a building and what's the most efficient way to give them things. So we start to look at it this way, first by turning all of the pieces, we call the mesh, analyzing it, and saying, here's what we understand of the people. Here's what we understand of the organization, right? Here's their costs. Here's their problems. When you look at it that way, you can start to build a better picture for if we offered them various types of flex, either on-demand, conferencing, social amenity spaces, how would they be able to be more effective in their footprint? How much would we know we have to build to respond to that? How should we expect our utilizations to look? What does that look like in terms of financials? What days is this going to be busy or not busy? When do I need to bring the outside world in? So it starts to allow us to have more powerful sort of automation of the center problem, which is people, individuals, but also the corporate's problem. What's the most effective way for me to give all my people the things that they need? Because the answer to that doesn't seem to be build a giant lump of bricks downtown anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
So how do you manage the still like sort of uncertainty around human behavior?
Yeah, so it's a really, 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 really good point, right? If you take, if you look at the sentiment data, like what people say they're going to do versus what they actually do, there's a wide margin, Jamie. wide margin. One of our clients, on average, across their New York City office, has 2.8 days. 20% of their population is supposed to be remote. 80% of their population is supposed to be hybrid, and 10% of the population is supposed to be office based.
Okay.
Right.
And
Of the
hybrid
total,
meaning like 3 days a
hybrid
week.
meaning 1 to 3
Okay.
days a week, something like that. Right. Of that, 2.8 days is the average number of days it's supposed to be in the office. If you look at the data for the last 8 months, it's less than 1.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. And you also see like big shifts in the population too. The people who thought they were remote, well, they're coming in hybrids. People who said they're hybrid, they've never even been in the office, right? And we're seeing this through all of the data
So
sets
the
from all of them.
self-reported, some of the self-reported stuff, like not accurate.
It's as of today, it is not accurate.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to look at the data to know what's really happening. You cannot send a survey.
Yeah, surveys are helpful, right? Because they help us set policies, and policies are really important, right? But the thing is that first of all, nobody's enforcing it.
Yeah.
The other piece to it is we have so much space that nobody's using the reservation systems because they don't need to.
They don't need
just
to
show up there.
Nobody's
right?
there. I don't need to reserve. So then
Yep.
not sort of, yeah. Okay.
So
See,
I'm not even
what I
reporting
batted
something
in,
standard.
but I did not tell you what I was planning to do.
Exactly. So a lot of these systems that we know we're going to need just don't have that much take up yet. Sentiments versus actuals, wide range. But what we started to look for is called stability, or the population stability index, right? So over the course of the months.
Is that copyrighted, by the way?
No, it's actually a formula. You can go look it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really used for like it, how stable an area is by how often people move.
Okay.
So PSI starts to tell us from month to month, has it stabilized?
Yeah. Okay.
Are people still shifting, right? Are they shifting from remote to hybrid? Are they showing up the same sort of days? So we start to look at that, and we have seen that stability increased quite a bit right before Omicron. Omicron knocked it off. Stability disappeared over the summer, but the fall data is just now coming back. It's October 11th, so we don't have that much post school, but we believe we're going to start seeing stability going into the winter, and then I think first quarter, second quarter, I would guess, barring anything else, that we start to see more stability in the data. So that kind of gets to your question around like behaviors.
Yeah.
Well, behaviors are a complicated thing, but has the population generally stabilized? If it has, then you can start trusting the numbers quite a bit more.
To make decisions.
Make decisions, yeah. If it's not stabilized, all the predictive models in the world are useless, right?
Yeah. So our occupiers, what are they trying to do with the data right now if we don't think it's yet stabilized?
I think most, not just occupiers, owners, everybody in the middle, everybody's got a data problem. Everybody's got a data problem because nobody really looked at it like this before. Nobody needed it, right? There's a very small handful of companies that invested in these initiatives in the late 2010s, and they're starting to reap the benefits of it because at least they have these things in place with high degrees of resolution. So most people are really struggling to just pull the basics together, right? Just to be able to understand how many people came to the office, right? What days of the week, what teams do they represent? And so it's an enormous amount of effort and energy for the operational teams at occupiers, because they still have the same amount of transactions to do this year that they had last year and pre-COVID. But now every transaction that they do takes at least
they have
8
to
weeks.
layer this on. They're trying to layer this on. Okay.
Yeah. Just to be able to make a decision, you wait 8 weeks.
Do you get hired? Who hires you on the occupier side?
So generally, from mid markets and below, they don't really have a head of real estate. They tend to be more like CFO driven, et cetera. So the CFOs who are being tasked with the CEOs saying, "I know I have too much space, cut it."
Yeah.
Because I want to repurpose that money for something else. So of sort of the mid markets, it's generally those types of functions because they have no resources, right? They have no access to data scientists, data analytics, et cetera.
Tell us how to figure this out. Okay.
Yep. And then from the enterprises, head of real estate, we tend to be very geared, at least now and probably in the next year, towards procurement, right? That's the big driver. Everybody wants to know how much what type, right? And so that's sort of taking us through the end of next year. So the heads of real estate, generally who are tasked with the optimization functions, are our primary clients on the occupier side.
Is HR in the room?
HR is what we're planning for next, right? So what we talked about, like, again, that common data pile, well, it's common to everybody. And all it does is tell you, here's what we think the people are doing, right? Real estate today is using it for procurement, but HR is going to use it to start putting policies in place, understand the effects of those policies. But generally speaking, I think the story of HR will be enormously valuable after optimization is done.
Okay.
Because you can't, all the policies in the world aren't going to do anything if you've got a ridiculous amount of space.
Right.
But once that's done, HR is going to be the one who's going to optimize the system, keep it optimal, understand what changes need to get made, because we're about to have a lot less resources than we ever had before. So HR has got to be a good manager.
So, okay, optimization gets done, and then HR is sort of optimizing within the optimization. That's where like the flex up, flex down. We need more
flex up, flex down, set policies.
People are doing and telling us they want. This is what like the voice of the people will eventually come through HR versus real estate saying.
But I'll also throw a really interesting one for HR, which I find really fascinating because the math sort of took us there, which is if we have, let's say we have a sales organization and a marketing organization and an engineering organization, right? Each of them has their own work from home policies, right? And
within the same company, you're saying?
Within the same company, yeah, which is crazy. If you look at all the RTO numbers top to bottom, none of it makes any sense, right? Except like urban, suburban has generally had a trend, right? But if you look at those teams and you're HR and you're asking the question, which you hear all the time, oh, I want people to be productive and have those collaboration. If you don't do anything, the probability that one team shows up and another team show up are random. There's no relationships. We call that affinity, right? What is the relationship between two teams? Well, it can be measured. Teams can show that they have an affinity with each other.
Yeah.
Or it can be an outcome that we want, right? Yeah. We want to have that. So we better set policies that create affinity between sales and marketing.
Yeah, right. We can't have them never showing up in the office or never meeting again.
Exactly. But where it gets really quirky though is like, if you set all the teams to have affinity with each other, that means they all have to come in on the same day.
And then what do you do about optimizing your space?
And then how do you optimize that, right? Now that's the tension between these teams is like, you can't dial one side without it impacting the data and telling procurement to do something different. Yeah. So they're all hitched to each other's wagons in a way they never were before.
Okay, so then how are you flipping that for the asset owner? Like Heinz, mentioned like 2% of people are in on, Mondays and Fridays.
Yeah.
So how are they thinking about, their like what they sell and how they're configuring and this is asset owners who've taken their earmuffs off and saying, we get it. Things are changing. Yeah. So what do we do?
There's a lot more of them. There's a lot more of them than there was last year. There's a lot more of them than there was 2 years ago, right? In fact, if you go back to like 2020, when we first started calling around, people were like, it's fine. They're going to come back. Everything's good.
We're good. Yeah.
We're good. Call them 2 years later. They're like, oh yeah, no, we're launching a flex brand and it's called Flexify or something silly like that. Right. So how they're looking at it is, I think the ones who are doing it sort of knee jerky are following the WeWork industrious models, right? They're saying, I'm going to just dunk in 20,000 square feet, check a box that I have it, and call it a day. But most of that is still designed to the outside world, still designed as like selling desks and conference rooms to the externals and selling like smaller units of things, because that's how owners generally tend to think. They're like, it doesn't
help with the optimization.
It doesn't help with optimization, right? And so the smarter ones, and I think you're seeing it, whether we're involved with it or not, are definitely asking themselves the question, the only way I can make money is if my building is highly occupied.
Yep.
And the only way I can get to high occupancy is if I do something different. And that was John Ward, the CIO of Bridges' point. It's like, I don't know what the future of buildings look like, but I know that buildings that don't have any people in them aren't likely to stay around, right? And so if you want those people, you better be able to offer to the head of real estate a compelling proposition that gets him to put his people in your building. And so that's sort of the story there. It's like, we know we have to build them, but we need to get the data to tell us how much, where, and on what days. Because you're talking about that Monday through Friday problem. We can't just have spaces that are going to be used Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
What happens? What do you do about that?
Yeah, so from the owner side, it's actually easier because you just implement revenue optimization, right? You say that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are higher price.
Oh, wait. Interesting. Okay, so when you're optimizing, if you have to change the way you're pricing
Yeah,
this.
so imagine Jamie, you're on a team, you run a marketing team at an
Yeah, I
organization.
want to come in on Wednesday. I'm paying
Yeah,
more. If I'm
but
willing
you're
to
on a
come in on
cycle.
Friday, I'm getting a deal,
Exactly.
donuts.
Yep. And that's where I think the occupiers are heading, is like real estate as a concept of one single monolithic structure who controls all things is now being broken into discretionary spending for teams and individuals.
Yeah, right.
But if you have a discretionary spending of $10,000 a year per employee, some random number like that, and your employers keep spending all of their money on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, they're going to be out of budget by August.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a way to play the same system that airlines and hotels have done forever.
Yeah. So because I keep thinking about this problem for space operators. Yep. It works better if there's a budget that I have to adhere to because I'm an employee. So I have to flex my desire. Like, I don't want to be in the office on Monday or Friday, but like if I'm managing a team and I'm going to be out of a budget, then I have to tell everybody, guys, this is what we're doing. Sometimes we're going in on Monday.
one Monday out of the month, right. We're going in, and it's our money.
Interesting. Yeah, because the individual user is never going in on Monday or Friday.
No,
and you really can't. I see operators. I just had one operator saying he's testing, like, I think a Friday or a Monday, like a catered breakfast to try to get utilization. And I was like, I just don't know if individuals, like, can you change their behavior? Like, is there enough of a carrot? I don't know. The pricing structure is very interesting. Yeah.
Those things to me are like, I don't know. I think that they're marginal, right? I think like if you were to look at the data after it's all said and done and we have optimization, you're like, I want to get people on a Friday. You have to question yourself and say, like, okay, am I going to spend $10,000 or $20,000 for Friday
to nudge people in on Friday
to get 6% more utilization? Like, does that make sense to me? Or am I going to take those $20,000 and put it to the days where I know people will come in, and that'll have more bang for the buck, right?
Yeah. So if I'm an operator outside of an optimized building, I have to figure that out. But if I'm in an optimized building, if I'm an operator or the asset owner is running their own brand, like there's you're going to figure out some sort of strategy to try to manage it.
You need one because you can't. The thing that none of these systems like is volatility.
Yeah.
None of them like it, right? Because you can't. High peak days means a couple of times everybody hates you.
Right.
Low average utilization is awful as well. So you need to find that managed middle ground, just like the hotels do, just like the airlines do. You're not overselling your flights.
Yep.
But you're not running flights empty either.
Yep. Right. Totally. Exactly. Interesting. Okay. So
this is fun, Jamie. I'm glad you invited me. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad too. So how do you make money? Is it consulting? Is it on both sides?
So we're switching to a SaaS-based model. And to be frank though, too, it's what's kind of needed today, right? I don't think there's anything that we do that other humans couldn't do and charge a consulting fee for.
Yep.
But once you get that piece of paper, it says, here's the things. Next week, it's changed.
Right.
Yep. And so I'm not saying we're not pushing to a SaaS-based model because, like, oh, I love the multiples, which the multiples aren't bad, right? But we're saying that we need to convert the consulting exercises of yesteryear into an ongoing process that's managed.
Yeah.
And so to do that, we have to go to that model because it creates something at a good enough price point.
Yeah.
To say, well, this is better than the alternatives, right?
Yeah. So then it becomes a tool that can be used by either side to get the data.
Either side. Yeah.
Okay.
Like ideally where I see the system ending up is an occupier, instead of saying like, I need 25,000 square feet, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Unless they've done all those pre-calcs, right? They're more likely going to come to an owner and say, hey, here's my demand model. Show me what you can do for me.
Yep.
Like, show me You think I need 14,000 square feet of conventional, access to 270 desks, 27 times a year in a conference room? You're going to have these at a known price, and that's going to be in my lease? Great. I love that deal.
So how does the ownership team, so I can see like a Heinz, a Tishman, they're probably almost there or there. But most ownership teams like don't have the people that know how to manage that. So like, how do they get there? How do they get the people on their team, or do they not, that can turn around and say, here's what you need, here's the recommendation, and here's what it looks like, and here's the pricing?
Yeah. So I think first off, though, the first thing to say here is when we talk about flex like this, right? Just to make flex even more confusing than right? When we talk about flex like this, I don't think it's really fair to compare it to like a really like awesome boutique co-working operator, right? Who's like culture, community, they've created it, like they've got an awesome building and great staff, and like it's not what this is going to be, right? This is going to be great. It's going to be a good product.
Yep.
But you're not going to stay at like a boutique hotel. You're going to be at a Marriott.
Okay.
Right? Like very standardized sort of environments where if I go there, it's going to be good. And I'm going to get the things that I want. So just to kind of level set on that piece, number one, right? And then number two, I think that the big thing that needs to change is our definition of property management needs to change, right? And property management has really been the low man on the totem pole in the commercial real estate world for so long, right? If you just think about a real estate owner, there's asset management, there's leasing, and there's property management. Property management's job are costs, leasing's revenue, asset management's capital, and managing revenue and costs, revenue and expense. But those are the only people that we have boots on the ground. At every location, we have boots on the ground, right? And so the property manager needs to get ripped out of the basement, right? And put into a front and center position. Generally needs to get younger skewed.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, so capable if trained and okay.
And obviously, by the way, like enabled, right? Technology enables high touch. That should be the mission, right? You're building all of these things for one person to use so that they don't have to have 10,000 other people, right? Or they don't have to do their job and this job and not be able to exercise sort of that white glove treatment that you'd want, right? And so I think on that
property manager needs to get elevated and trained and enabled and all the things.
Change the title too. Don't call him property manager.
Right.
I don't know what to call him yet, Jamie. If you have any good ideas.
Okay. And then what about the broker?
Yeah, I mean, the broker world's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a lot harder to do these transactions, a lot harder, right?
So is the broker still involved, but also, elevated in the same way that the property manager is, and that they need to understand how to work in this new demand model world, which most of at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I would say
the asset owner needs a team, right? It's not
a team.
Yeah.
And that team needs to be less siloed than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Right. As you know, Flex, like they're all one team.
Yep.
You don't have this deep silo of like 2,700 brokers and then asset managers and property managers who never talk laterally to each other and rarely communicate. You need to have a nucleus at the asset that all understands what's going on, right? And then can all kind of double tap into each other and cover, right? So the role of the broker is going to be different. But I would say the role, if you just look at the role that brokers are playing in Flex today, see Hector Colonus's graph that he put out about like the percentage of leads that came from brokers. 2021 wasn't a lot. 2022, it's more. But I think brokers need just to find a new way to monetize themselves in this new space. Once they do that, they're going to be brokers again, right? But it'll be a challenge for them.
Yep. Okay. Agreed. Interesting. So, okay, how much of this is happening now? Like, is this like kind of a future? Are you setting the foundation?
Yeah, it's going to take us 5 years.
Yeah.
5
Okay.
years. This is commercial real estate. This moves slow. This moves slow. So, you kind of buckle in and say you have to be in this for the long haul, But I'm really pleased to say, and I won't announce anything fun today, but good things are happening for us, and we will have large portfolios to play around inside of. It will be an organizational effort for everybody, occupiers, owners, everybody's changing their systems, right? So we expect next year to really see a surge in interest for occupiers of adjacent flex.
Yeah,
that's definitely going to be the trend. But following that, we think we're going to start seeing a requirement in LOIs for a very descriptive type of engagement. And then following that, it's going to be in everyone, right? So it will take time for everybody to learn how to communicate over it. But yeah, nothing's going to happen quickly.
so how does the asset evolve? Like you talked about, sort of the myriad of like flex configurations.
Yep.
So is that part of like the process, like the asset needs to undergo a physical change in order to kind of support that? Or
I think in a general sense, no, I think there will be some assets that don't work at all.
okay,
Like some of the old C assets or super high-rise 1970s
Yep.
construction that was designed for like all exterior offices with those aren't going to work, right? And those are the real challenges, the real big like 1.4 million square footers that you can't convert that to anything else, right? I don't yet pretend to have answers to that problem, but the thing that needs to change more than anything, in my humble opinion, humble as it is we need to standardize our interiors now, right? And I always make the same joke that like, I don't care who you are, if you're Facebook or your, parents' bank, everybody builds the same amount of stuff inside a space, always. They build the same amount of things. If you just reduce it to the number of stuff, it's all the same stuff. Oh, we have a glass wall. Oh, we have a painted wall. Oh, it's all the same things because there's only so many configurations you can do. What most buildings need to do is establish what their baseline standard is going to be and ensure that that standard meets or exceeds the expectations of their occupiers in the building. But again, doesn't have to blow its doors off. You don't have to spend $200 a foot. Okay. You want to meet or exceed, but just barely. And so that's going to, I think, the big change that's underway is we should expect to see more standardization of the interiors. And also like, the lobby conditions and amenity stuff, like all of those random conference rooms and tenant amenity stuff, those are dead.
Yeah.
Gone. Yep. Even gyms. I know you love working out, Jamie, but like nobody uses the gyms at office.
Nobody works out at work. I hear you.
Give them something else. Give them something that they can use. And so I think that the overall amenities packs and sort of the way that owners think about it as offensive capital. Offensive capital used to be deployed at like amenity spaces and blah, 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 blah. That's all going to get bundled together instead of distributed and dropped into a single standardized environment that delivers the results that occupiers want, that allows them to be efficient and take up the slack, right?
Okay, so is enough of the ecosystem getting on board with this? Like, so now you need not an architect, but you need somebody who can drop in that program.
Yeah, I think most of the companies have really upskilled their own internal departments quite a bit. There's still, by the way, an enormous amount of talent out there, like the Genslers and the HOKs of the world and the Unispaces who've all built Flex before, right? They built it for Industrious or somebody.
So they may get pointed at some of this.
Yeah, and they'll get pointed at it. But it's not just obviously space. It's like the IT schedules, right? You need to have good technology that has to be in those things. Yeah. And so that's where like the total overall package sort of has to get built. So yeah, that's being invested in today. That's why Hines has the Square, right? Yeah. Tishman has Studio. Yeah. Bridge, one of our suburban clients, has a Bridge. Each one has its standards. There's a book. You build it for a price, right? It looks like this. And it's relatively repeatable.
Yeah, or scalable, depending on the size of the building.
Yeah, mass customization.
Yep, got it. Brandon, how do people find you that need your services?
We've been kind of in the shadows for a little while, picking our right clients. I would say, like, if any of the readers out there, or any of the listeners out there are actually invested and motivated to do this, then we're a really good partner. I would say that if you're just kind of kicking the tires, then we'll be the worst partner. the worst, because we'll hound you and we'll try to make you change. If you don't want to change, don't change. I don't care, right? But if you actually want to do something, then we tend to be very, very, very good partners. That's why we are a little bit more selective over who we take on. Yeah, so we haven't necessarily gone mass market, but I'm always eager to hear somebody who wants to do something regardless of size. I think the one thing for us is I am more impressed and want to work with people who want to change rather than just by someone's scale, right?
Good point. Yep. All right. Thank you for spending your time today and
My pleasure.
taking us through. It's just super thought provoking what you're up to. So I didn't know a lot of kind of what you were doing and kind of the platform behind what you're working on. So we'll have to have you back, and then Gio can ask you all the hard questions that I didn't ask.
Anytime. This was fun. It's nice to just like talk about what we're doing without a specific agenda. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and I should mention Gio and I also always like to promote the GWA. Brandon's on the GWA, the Global Workspace Association board, and put a lot of work into the conference and panels and speakers. And so thank you for that, especially when you're building your own company. We know that, and have 2 small children. You know, exactly.
Yep. Well, look, the GWA needs to continue to be a really strong voice in this. Right?
Yeah. Thanks,
so
Brandon.
Happy to support.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.